Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick, and we're here to continue our UFA series today. If you're not familiar with it so far, we've been going all week, but we're asking individuals to come on the show and give me their one UFA from outside the organization they'd like to come to Baltimore. Joining us today to talk about his guy is Aaron Walker. You might always know him as AJ from Twitter. AJ, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Ken. How are you?
Loving life. We're getting right again after the Ravens elimination again from the playoffs, which is tough. But tell us, who's your guy?
Hey, yeah. So my guy is actually Khalil Mack. Um, I'm thinking of Khalil Mack as a name that we all know, with the big name from the 2014 draft that went number 5 from Buffalo, and we all were like, "Ooh, that look where he'll end up," and saw his career from afar, and that's who my guy is. Basically, he's just like a name that you think about is nothing but sacks, almost to the point where his numbers are Hall of Fame worthy. Getting there, he's got 107.5 sacks, I believe, at this point in his career, which is something that the Ravens really could use. So that's my guy.
Okay, Ravens don't have a lot of depth. Khalil Mack can still bring it. A little bit of a down year for the Chargers. In fact, I'm trying to look at how many games he played. Looks like he played almost the entire season if he didn't in fact play every game. But his production in terms of pressures was off this year. Certainly his sack and quarterback hit production off a little bit as well. Concerned about that at all?
Not really. I saw that he did play the 16 games. I saw he did have like about 50%, 56% of his um snaps he was playing based on like from last year. I guess the year 2023 he had like 86%. So it's his time being his usage went down. However, when he was out there, getting 6 sacks in the limited plays that he had, and still being able to get forced fumbles, and still having 15 QB hits, even with a down year like that, it's still something that we can definitely use here on the Ravens.
Yeah, you definitely want to knock the quarterback down as often as possible. I certainly like the idea of getting an edge because, in terms of the need it addresses, I think the Ravens have a needed edge, and I think it may be a position where the Ravens need to go cheap, or it may be a position where the Ravens need to go young through the draft. Khalil Mack is just the opposite of those. He's an older guy who would cost a fair amount of money. So to talk about the need he addresses with the Ravens.
Well, I think one of the things that we're missing from the Ravens in their constantly being stopped in the playoffs is the ability to cause turnovers, especially in the playoffs. For when you look at Lamar Jackson's last 8 playoff games, I believe the defense only had around 2 to 3 turnovers total in 8 games. That's not going to get it done for any QB. When you look at his Lamar Jackson's peers having 22 turnovers or 17 turnovers, I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. That's a big difference. And to be able to get to the quarterback, as you saw in the Super Bowl, it means a whole world of difference for your defense. And I think that a name may need to be added to the team that may not just be young, but somebody who's experienced that could fill that void for us here.
Okay, well, that's fair enough, and certainly a reasonable question here. So, Ravens are very thin at edge. In particular, they're thin in terms of guys who really bring a pass rush presence. They had more last year with Clowney, Van Noy, and Oweh being one of the really great threesomes in the NFL. This last year, they had to rely a lot on Oweh as a situational rusher as opposed to more of a early down roll, just because they needed to preserve him. They didn't have anybody else to really rush the passer. So you saw a lot of Tavius Robinson on early downs. We saw a lot of Harrison on early downs. We saw actually very limited use of Ajabo and almost no use of Adisa Isaac. So in terms of the roster, how would you see that playing out if the Ravens were to acquire Khalil Mack?
Well, I think that you can add him to that room still. I know that there's definitely going to be a rotational element to his game at being at 34, and looks like he's kind of at that age now. So that might be able to actually help with the contract as well when you get to that point of like having to sign him. That he may want to take those early either early to late downs as a pass rusher solely, and then take some pressure off of Oweh having to be the guy. And you have Van Noy there being a little up there as well. But you have that whole D line that's kind of ripe, and now you get to that point where you have people who can beat one-on-ones, and everybody has to play a one-on-one. I think he fits in perfectly for them. Yeah, it might slide on one of the younger guys, but I don't think that hurts anything when it comes to pass rush. You can't really have enough of that, and you're accounting for. Do you have injuries that happen? For people get nicked up during the season, and he looks like he's been relatively healthy. So that's something we definitely want, is availability.
Okay, well, fair enough. That's a you can I think you can keep one more on the roster, and they did this last year, but they were put in a position where either Isaac or Ajabo was active, but not both of them.
Right.
So uh, I personally myself, I'm not that upset if David Ajabo's time in Baltimore is done based on what's happened for the
Yeah.
first 3 years.
Disappointing. Disappointed in Ajabo's production. I know that he got injured, and maybe that injury is a 2 to 3 year injury. Who knows? But at this point, I think that you can't keep taking the chances when you have this window for the Ravens with this roster, kind of these pillars out here to be able to build on and play with for a Super Bowl contender. Really, don't play with that anymore. Just get a guy that can do it. You'll add it to the room. You have Chuck Smith there to assist with them. You have Van Noy as a veteran already, and maybe somebody Owe, and maybe even Tavarius Robinson to learn from even more than they had before. So I think that room is ripe for like one more injection. Not saying it's taken away from whoever is already there, but it adds.
Okay, and you'd prefer Khalil Mack to say a higher round draft pick, which might be another alternative, whether that's a 1 or a 2.
Yeah, the problem with that is not that we can't develop them, is because we don't normally draft in the earliest portions of those 2 rounds
Mhm.
that give you those elite guys. So you're always kind of going with a toss up. This one you get it for sure, at least for 1 year, if you can fit him in. That's pretty much my angle there. The fact that he's a vet, he's done it before, and it seems like when vets come here to the Ravens, they get rejuvenized. So you might have a guy who opens up and gives you a double-digit season when he didn't do that last year, but the year before he did.
Yeah,
So
well, that certainly happened with both Clowney and Van Noy in terms of
yeah.
turning their careers around at an opportune time. So he's an exciting player. He's played 668 or more snaps. In fact, if you look at it, he's played 818 or more snaps in all but 2 of the years of his career. The 2 years he didn't do it were 2021 with Chicago when he missed some time, only played 315, and this last year with the Chargers when he played 668, even though he's basically healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So he played about 40 snaps per game, a little bit less than that if you count it as 17 games as opposed to 16.
Agreed.
But he is a guy who I guess there would be questions about how much he'd play for the Ravens. Ravens more of a rotational team. Would you see him as, if you had an over under on it at 668? Which way would you bet?
Definitely under. I would
Okay.
say there, and I think that's the beauty of it, because I think him going to a team where he needs to be the guy is probably not his game anymore. I think he needs to be going against the tackle who's been out there all game, right, and
Mhm.
can come in for 10 to 20 snaps on defense and just pin his ear back and go.
Okay. All right. Well, the Ravens usually generate a lot of those stats in games because they tend to have the lead in the Jackson era, and
Mm-hmm.
that creates more opportunities for obvious passing situations. One of the other things about Khalil Mack, which is kind of interesting, he's played 9,500 snaps roughly in the NFL. 547 of those have been in coverage. Even 17 last year is not a lot. It's a career low, 2.5% roughly. But in 23, he was in coverage 53 times. He is a guy who can drop a little bit and do a little something for you there. Do you put any value on that, or is pretty much 100% as a pass rusher what he brings?
The way the defense seems to be going now, and with all the pieces we're having changing here with Chuck Pagano here, and it looks like we've added DMPs, and
Mhm.
that element comes with DMPs as defense is moving back and forth like that. But it looks like they're focused on having pass rushers rush the passer, and I think that's best for him at this stage. I mean, do you want a 34-year-old having to always go out there when you have other secondaries pretty nice, pretty good, and you have linebackers that can cover as well. So I think he just depend the ear back and go for the quarterback type of player at this stage, and I let him do what he does best.
All right. I am actually a fan of having outside linebackers who can drop because I think it makes your pass rush more flexible. I
Mm-hmm.
think you're able to blitz from the slot, from inside linebacker, and take over those responsibilities. We saw Michael Pierce, of course, not only drop the coverage but get an interception when he did it. That was just
Play of the year.
ridiculous in terms of it. But I do like it when defenders know what they're doing in terms of being able to drop. So probably it won't hurt you too badly there.
Yep, for sure.
All right, so let's talk production. What would you expect out of him in this year? What would be a reasonable expectation? And I know I know people always want to give like 9 sacks or 10 sacks, or they want some really high level thing. But just in terms of like number of snaps played in total for the season, what would he get in terms of his maybe total pressures, and most importantly, probably when would he play? When would he best fit into the Ravens defense?
For him, I think that you're looking at a guy, and if you have a 650.
Didn't you know it's possible to get THC shipped right to your door? Mood delivers premium 100% federally legal THC directly to you. I'm talking about delicious high potency gummies, top shelf flour, home baked cookies, vapes, anything you'd find at a dispensary, you can now order online and have it shipped quickly, discreetly, and conveniently right to your door. And every Mood product is made from pesticide-free cannabis grown on America's best small farms at prices that won't destroy your wallet. Best of all, not only is every Mood product backed by a 100-day satisfaction guarantee, but as I mentioned, listeners get 20% off their first order with code RAVENS. So head to mood.com/ravens, check out their online dispensary, and let Mood help you discover your perfect mood. And don't forget to use promo code RAVENS when you check out to save 20% on your first order.
The snaps on defense, that he's doing at least 400 of them, maybe more, 350 to 400. If you can get him out there, of course, health comes into it. But also, I think that you want to make sure that he's in the right position. So I think this is where Chuck Smith and those guys come in. We saw the production for the other guys. So adding him in there, I think he can reasonably do 7 to 9 sacks. Just from the rotational position, knowing that we're going to go against teams in our division that have QB, at least one with Burrow, but just our schedule, the way we have it this year, we're going to be going against, Josh Allen again, right? And he's going to be dropping back a bunch. So you're going to have opportunities for him to be out there. And I would say, I saw it, matter of fact, his last playoff game, and nobody even thinks about it because they lost, right? But he got 2 sacks in that game. 2 sacks. And that's something like, he ended on that note, and that's not adding to his total 6 for the year. That's a playoff sack. So
Understood.
Yep. So
and they do count. I agree.
So yeah, so you count those that he plays in, something he wasn't playing a lot, but he plays hard in those games that you need him. That's the games you need him, and that's the games we're missing, right? Those playoff games where somebody shows up. 2 sacks, I'll take that as a high note of him leaving the Chargers and coming over to the Ravens and doing the same thing for us. So 7 to 9, I would say. At a high mark, he could do the Van Noy and go up to 11. Right? He could even end up being the guy, and always being the guy who just rotates in and out. You just don't know how they would do it. It's really gone what time he gets in here, how fast he gets in here, how fast he gets acclimated, and does he turn it on again? Because like I said, these kind of players turn on when they come here. For some reason, there's something like, oh, I found my young legs again. So. Yeah. I see that for him.
Well, the Ravens have really done a really good job of finding the right level of playing time for veterans in recent years. And it's one of the reasons why I would be maybe a little bit hesitant to sign a player like Mack, because it's a big investment in an older player when they've been so successful making small investments in older pass rushers. But let's get on to that, because that's really the big question: is how much are you willing to pay Khalil Mack? To give you he was born 2/22/91, so he just yesterday turned 34.
Just yesterday. So yeah, we have a 34-year-old that's going to the season 34. I don't have to worry about him changing that age anytime soon. For him, I think you might want to do maybe, and then we're not going to be too complicated, but maybe don't ignore what happened with the Odell situation. And I know that's a completely different position, right? But sometimes you got to make the splash, right? Just because that's a guy maybe the Ravens have been eyeballing all this time, right? He's been on the Raiders. He's been on the Bears. He went to the Chargers with John Harbaugh's brother. And he's had a chance to be on 2 teams that we know weren't going anywhere. They're losing teams. And you have he finally gets to a team that's halfway decent. They only goes there for 1 year when he has a reasonable coach, right? And Jim Harbaugh. So he gets here, and it might be a situation where of course he's going to cost a little bit more, but maybe he's not as expensive as we think, and he has a shot at the ring. We don't
Okay.
know, right? So I'm thinking for him, like at 34 coming into the season, maybe take a flyer, take a dual 1 year. And I think last year he got around like a 1.2, which was his guaranteed salary. And I think it topped out, was his contract like 19 for that season?
Complex kind of situation here. His cap number was 25.4 million.
25.
He's got another 9 million of dead money this year. The
Yep.
Chargers are going to pay him, but he was on the back end of a long-term deal
Yeah.
where he had signed for a lot of money. So OTC's valuation for him last year was about 12 million, as I recall.
12 million. And I couldn't see that going up necessarily. So and this is where I wanted to kind of insert what I think about replacements. Now we have a tight end that's got, $11 million savings, that,
Mhm.
he may be at the end of his Ravens career because we have another player behind him who could be the tight end one. And I think that he's been a tight end one probably for a year now, maybe a year overdue, in Mark Andrews. So what happens when you move him? If you do move him and you just replace that number, you saying 12 million there, you're replacing that relatively close, replacing that number with 11 million, and just paying a little bit over. Now I'm getting to like the complexity of what the cap would look like for that, but I don't know if that's too much of a big drop off, funding wise, when you're getting money into the under the cap. So I think you do something like that when I think market you can release him today and it still be the same cap number regardless if it's June 1st or not.
Yeah.
But
So one question I would have
yeah,
with Andrews is I don't think you have to release him straight out because I think he has a tiny amount of trade value. Not a tiny amount. He has some trade value. Um, and if you wait till draft night, that might be your best chance to
yeah,
maximize the value you get on him. Last year, the contract coming up, he's only got $11 million that he earns
mm-hmm,
on this year, that's low for a player like Andrews. And I agree with you that likely behind him makes it very tempting to deal Andrews. But I think the Ravens will look at it. I don't think they'll be really excited by getting a fourth round pick, but that might be about his value. If anybody offers him a second round pick, they got to jump on that immediately. They
mm-hmm.
they have to do it.
All
But
right.
I'm with you. I think that they have to find some money to free up, and I think Andrews makes the most sense given the fact that Likely is so good.
Yeah, I was looking at like places that Andrews would fit in well for that, and I think you may have a dancing partner. We'll see how the draft, like you said, plays out. But and I'm not trying to get off the subject here, but looking at Tampa Bay,
Okay.
that's his best friend is the quarterback. It was in his wedding, right?
Hmm.
They don't necessarily need a tight end, but to complete that offense, that sounds like it puts him out of the conference. It's like it all lines up, and it kind of goes with the Ravens' MO of doing right by their players when somebody wants, or somebody is going to move on, and with the Ravens wanting to not just drop on Andrews off for nothing, right? Get him
Hmm.
somewhere where he would love to be, where it's with his old friend. And they get a player. We maybe get a pick back, a fourth round pick, a third round pick, whatever they want to give. I think a third round pick would be perfect. Second round
Okay.
pick's asking a lot. Fourth round pick, I feel like EDC doesn't want to lose any draft, any trades he does. But
Hmm.
a fourth or a third round pick for Andrews to go to Tampa, and then insert Mac with that money that you pretty much saved, but you already have a bumped up cap. I feel like this is super doable, super doable.
Okay. All right. I don't disagree with you. I think that could work out. I guess my main question coming out of that would be the age at the position because Owe is probably gone. And it might even increase the chance he's gone that you sign Mac because it might make him harder to sign long term.
Right.
Um, or maybe everybody realizes Mac is transitional. He's a 1 year guy, and maybe he's even signed that way. I think there's also good reasons not to sign Mac to a 3 year deal because I think it almost certainly becomes an old maid contract
Mm,
where he's really planning on playing 2 years and not three,
right.
and leaving the last year of that contract. He wants to get it front loaded as much as possible, but he's only considering it as a 2 year deal, and you're not getting the value of that third year in the same way. So I would like it to. Uh, I'd probably like it to be a 1 year deal with Mac as opposed to a multi year deal.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. That's pretty much what we're looking at here, from my opinion, for that particular player. do a 1-year deal, considering the age, consider the money that will be involved, get you out of it, get you out of the money business quick with him. You know, one in and out. So I think that's right. That's the same way, kind of what Odell happened with Odell. Kind of the same thing. I know the contract was a little different, but 1 year in, 1 year out. Get the production out of him. You might get a Super Bowl out of it. Who knows? But I think what you're looking for out of the player and what you're missing, he does help bring that.
So with Andrews, unless you re-sign him, and he's a little younger, but unless you re-sign him, you're looking at only 1 year of production also before you lose into free agency. The difference would be Andrews probably gives you a little bit of a comp pick in return, and Mack probably does not after 2025. He might, but I wouldn't bet on it. In fact, of what he would provide in terms of a comp pick to the Ravens after 25.
Yep, agreed. I know that the Ravens like to do that 1 year early before 1 year late, about instead of 1 year too late. So that does fit that MO with even with Mark Andrews, the beloved.
Right. All right. Aaron, outstanding job. Thank you for being so prepared in terms of coming to discuss this. I thought really good discussion. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Oh yeah, you can find me at on Twitter. I'm talking with my buddies on there, and I'm at AJ Part 2 number 2 on Twitter, and we're talking there. Also my buddies on Draft Nerds, they're also around. We talk shop. We're always online. We have spaces, and we also have playback. So that's where you can just watch like NFL film and talk draft and talk all types of things. So you can find us. You can find me on Twitter. All right.
Make sure you tag Aaron in if you want to get him in the conversation or want to hear about his other places where he watches playback. Appreciate you coming on. Other folks out there, it's not too late if you want to be on this show, particularly for a free agent. We need to get them all done, all recorded before the start of the league year. So hit me up with a DM in Twitter if you'd like to. If you have a player, a crush in this UFA class, you'd like to bring to the Ravens. Aaron, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Ken. This has been great.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.
Take care.